Welcome to the Becoming Baby Ready podcast, your podcast for queer family planning. My name is Sam, and throughout this podcast, you'll hear me have conversations with professionals who work alongside people who want to start and grow their families, as well as parents of intentionally created families. Everyone I speak to identifies as being part of the 2S LGBTQIA+ community. This is your opportunity to learn answers to questions you didn't even know you had. Today's conversation with David highlights his journey to becoming a father through adoption. It also talks about and delves into being a single gay dad in the community where he lives, as well as his commitment to helping families be created through adoption for those individuals who are seeking that pathway. Welcome. I am extremely excited today to be sitting chatting with David. And it is through the wonder of social media, which has its pros and its cons, that I have been connected to you, David. And we've had some fantastic conversations off mic, and I'm excited to have you tell us a little bit more about who you are and the members of your family.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited that we connected as well. And I'm excited about the work that you're doing in Toronto. So thank you so much for having me. Well, I'm David Marshall. I live in Maryland in the United States of America. And so right behind me is my family. That's my little boy, Josiah, who is now 6 years old. I was privileged to adopt him when he was 2 weeks old, and now all of a sudden I have a 6-year-old, and I don't. And he was 3, and the picture behind me. So
and that was
I
yesterday,
can't lift
right?
him, and that was yesterday, absolutely, when I could still lift him.
Right.
So yeah, that's family. But I am also the oldest of 3 younger brothers, and and my mom, my dad, they were married for 40 years, and we had a wonderful, wonderful family life.
Excellent. And then when they lead by example, all you can think of growing up is, I need to have a family too.
Absolutely.
And of
Absolutely.
all
That
of
was a
them,
dream.
right? It is a dream. It is a dream for so many of us. Of all of the methods that are available to people in the 2S LGBTQIA+ community to create their families, you don't have a uterus, from what I can understand. So you need to find another method. Can you tell us, what method did you choose to use?
I chose to use adoption. That was always my dream, to be an adoptive parent.
Excellent. Excellent. Was it an easy journey for you?
So, this is the kind of ironic thing. Yes, my
Good.
process was absolutely seamless. And so I had 2 very close friends who were not connected to each other, who were both adoptive parents. And so what's also amazing is my world is filled with adoptive parents from my family. There are many cousins in my family that were adopted by aunts and uncles of mine and my friends. I mean, so it was not and I hate to put it this way, but an abnormal thing. This was a very normal thing. This is what I've always seen. So I knew that adoption was going to be my journey to parenthood, or my way, excuse me, to parenthood. And so going back to the 2 friends, I spoke with both of them, and I asked them, where did they adopt from? And they both told me this amazing agency here in Maryland called Adoptions Together. And so then I said, well, will they be all right with me being gay? And that's just the way no coloring of anything. And they said, oh, absolutely. They're a very affirming agency. And so I went to an information session there, and I was right at home. And I will say, when I walked in, though, and I always tell this, to that information session, I was in a sea of what looked to be, um, and I guess I have to frame it in that way, would look to be heterosexual couples, but even more specific, would all look to be white heterosexual couples.
Right.
And so I'm walking in as a single gay man. So even though the agency is a very affirming agency, I still looked different, and I still felt different. and I sat in the front row. And interesting enough, between two Black women who also happened to be single women who were looking to adopt, but I was always at home at adoptions together.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And your friends told you about this private organization. Was it always your plan to go with a private adoption, or did you consider public? And I guess for those of us who are listening who don't have a lot of familiarity with either of those pathways, can you explain a little bit about the difference between the two?
Absolutely. So one of the easiest differences is one you pay for, one you don't. So
Right.
private adoption comes with a lofty cost, public adoption does not. Now, the thing is, when you're going private, and more specifically to why, to your question, to why I chose that route, I wanted to make sure that when I brought home my child was going to be with me. I was not okay with the prospect of my child potentially going back home. While with foster care, again, the major difference is that is a public um, a public service, and those children are being fostered, not necessarily to be adopted, because here in the States, the goal is permanency.
Right.
And so when I heard this, not that I'm a rich man at all, I said, well, I just didn't know. I need to be able to bring home my baby and know that my baby is going to be with me. I could never have dealt with that potential loss.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what took me to private adoption.
And my understanding too, from things that I've heard from other people, is that it depends too on where you are in the States, how long you may have to wait with a public adoption. So you may have to wait 90 full days before the birthing parent has, then by 90 days they have to fully make their decision. So that's a long time to emotionally connect with a child, and then maybe have to return them to their birthing parent.
It is, and a lot of the time, while it is just a 90-day law in general, but it also does depend on the state
Right.
as well. Some states there is no window of time where, so here in Maryland, there's a 30-day window of time where even if a parent has signed over parental rights, they can also take that, they can retract that. But there are some states that there is no window of time. I personally think it's good to have a window,
Mm-hmm.
um, just simply because this is a process, and we want to make sure that the birth parent as well is taken care of in the process. It's not just about us, the adoptive parent. But to your point about foster care, while there is that 90-day time frame in some states, of course, it often turns into years,
Mm-hmm.
simply because there is the time frame where they're really strongly advocating for the birth parent, because that again is the major goal. And also, if potentially not the birth parent, who is the next of kin?
Mm-hmm.
So I have a dear friend in New York right now who has been in this process for um, over 2 years. Her son, she got her son when he was 2, and he and my son Josiah are both 6. His birthday's in January, but there is still no permanency yet in terms of no finalization of adoption or even the petition for adoption. Um, so that's been very, very emotionally draining to her.
Mm-hmm.
But she also understood the process. She understood it, but what we understand in our minds and where our hearts are,
Mm-hmm.
where our emotions are two different things altogether.
Well, and you think too about the idea that if things were to change and the child was taken from her and returned to the birthing parent, the emotional effect that it would have on her would be absolutely paralyzing, I'm sure. But on the child, who has connected with her as a parental figure for years, and how do they then change their way of thinking and everything else?
And what becomes, and that's so true, and that has been a long fear of mine where she is concerned, because it was a fear going into the process, right? And we've had those long conversations, and sometimes they've been very emotional. And I'm always on the end of, I'm a strong man of faith. And I was like, God's not going to do that to you. He knows what you can handle. So he's not going to do that to you. Yes, it's a long process. It's a long road, but this is your baby. So don't, so I don't want you to place yourself in that thought process that this could happen. But what is also very, very troubling, I will say, about our system is we're belaboring a process that, to my mind, should not be. It is a thing where we're looking at birth parents who, after a certain amount of time, when is enough enough? When have the chances run out? And with her situation in particular, there have been some extremes. And why are we still here?
Right.
Why are we still here? Because this is torturous to everyone involved. And so I would love to be able to, like, if there's a case of addiction or something like that, we want to be able to help and give due diligence for parents to be able to work through that. But when we have other situations, more extreme, often dealing with sexual misconduct and such thing, I'm lost. Exactly what we're doing here. And it wasn't directed towards a child, but still at the same time, what are we doing?
Right. Yeah.
So I would like to see the system modified. I do sit on a board here called the Citizens Review Board for Children, and we help to determine permanency for children in the foster care system. And one of my first questions is, like, I'm that very repetitive one. What does a child want? Because for me, I don't really need to go through this long process. While, yes, we are a checks and balances organization, and we are trying to make sure that while the child is in care, that the necessary things in terms of doctor's appointments have been maintained, in terms of school, how are grades, if there's an IEP, how often is that IEP being assessed? But all in all, when those things seem to be intact, I just want to know, what does the child?
Right. And they do generally have an opinion.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Even if it's not the one we want them to have, they do generally have an opinion, and
Yes.
their voice should matter.
Yes, it should be honored.
Yeah. Are you comfortable? Because at the end of the day, as you said, public adoption is free, and I think I want to use that term with air quotes, because there are still lawyers' fees and things like that that do come out of pocket. They're not, but the fees are not the same. Surrogacy is never free.
No.
Using donor anything is never free. Fertility journeys are not free. Creating families in our community is going to have a financial line on it somewhere. Are you comfortable talking about what that was for you?
Sure. So all in all, when I was finished with everything, that was around a little over $28,000. And from what I had heard going in, it was not it didn't sting as much as it may sound, because some people may say, oh my goodness, 20, but I heard a lot loftier price. I will say about my agency is that they operate on a sliding scale. And I love that because often it is perceived that if you want to go the private route, you have to be rich.
Mhm.
Um, and I feel like at a certain time, it was more directed towards people of a certain socioeconomic level. Um, but my agency was very, very, they wanted everyone to know that they were welcome no matter what. I mean, and so socioeconomics plays a role in that as well. And we will find a place for you here. We will work with you here. Um, and so uh, that I very much appreciate about the agency. Now I see their prices have gone down since I'm trying to see if I can get a credit, but
I don't know if it works that way, but okay.
yeah, but I'm happy to see that.
Yeah, it's true, and I'm glad to hear that, is you're one of the few people whose story actually is such that you heard a number and had an idea of what to expect, and it was pretty much in that ballpark. What I've heard from so many other people is that it all of a sudden ballooned by an additional 50%, and depending on if it's a surrogate and there's been issues that come up during the pregnancy, so now you're paying for hospital care, or the surrogate being out of work, or those kinds of things. And there's always unforeseen things that people seem to find come up. And but it's not, I mean, even $28,000 is not chump change. That's something you have to fully be prepared and budget for. And that's big.
So I always share this part. The last part of the placement fee was the largest sum, which was 12,000 some odd dollars. And I tell people that I left the agency with all of $249 that's in my savings account. But I had my baby. And I knew that my baby was going to be with me. And all I had to do was pray that my roof wasn't going to blow off my house, or my car wasn't going to all of a sudden do something crazy, because I had no money to fix any of these things.
Right.
But what I will say to that, though, is here in the States, there is a credit. So in the year that you finalize, you get back upwards of $14,000, and that's in addition to your child tax credit.
Wow.
So I was able to replenish and then some. So there are, so while yes, you might leave feeling a little nervous about the state of your financial future, there is a tax credit that does come back, which is, I wouldn't say, it's not a bad credit.
No, that's not a bad credit at all. And that certainly helps make it feel like you're just standing on a little bit more secure, solid footing for moving forward as a new family, right? Because things come up with families too.
Yes, absolutely. And then the other thing that we have, but I did not know about it, there are a lot of grants that are available to adoptive families here. And I didn't find out about those until I ventured into the work that I do now. And I might be salty about that too. I want to, I want a credit on my amounts, and maybe I want a back-ended grant as well. But I'm very happy about these things, because again, there are efforts, conscious efforts being made to make this a lot more affordable, because again, people tend to choose private, not because they're rich, not because they're selfish, but because they just want to know that that child is going to be there. And while there is foster to adopt, again, that doesn't mean that that first child is going to be the one that you adopt.
Right.
And most people are not okay with that.
No, because you give your heart, and it hurts anytime you have a heartbreak, whether it's a relationship with a peer who you've formed a romantic relationship with, or with a parent, with a child, a parent and child.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a lot. It's a loss. It's a grief. And I always say, especially when people are considering this journey, well, one, I'm so vested in making sure it happens because there are two things people never get over in life: the loss of a child
Mhm.
and not being able to have one when that's
Right.
what you really wanted.
Mhm.
Um, you can find fulfillment in other ways in terms like my degrees are in music. I did not make it to the Metropolitan Opera in New York City, but I did have a decent career as an opera singer. I felt fulfilled in doing other things. But no amount of godchildren, and I have several of them, were going to replace
Mhm.
that internal desire to be a dad.
Right.
And I said to my friend in New York, who, as a lot of people, I want to be married. I get it.
Mhm.
But can you die and go to heaven not being called mommy? And that was a different kind of thought process for her.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
And she said, I didn't think about it that way, and I certainly cannot. I said, well, let's not do this waiting on these husbands, please and thank you. Let's let's jump on it. There's so many doing it and doing it alone. It is hard, but at the same time, um, this is that thing that again you'll never get over if you didn't do it.
Right. And, and you've taken a different approach. And often what we hear people talk about, and one of the reasons that so many people don't consider the root of adoption is biology. They want a child that they feel is biologically theirs.
Mhm.
When you look at Josiah, he is your son. He
Oh,
is unequivocally your son through and through.
mhm.
Has that ever been something that's crossed your mind and just thinking, I wish that there was a biological connection to him, or does it really not matter?
It doesn't. No, it doesn't matter at all. I was instantly in love with him when I
Mhm.
walked into that room. Um, I Now this might sound crazy. Or my mother, who was there with me, and one of Josiah's godmothers, my mother looked. He looks just like you when you were a baby, and I was like, I don't. But the crazy thing is, I get that all of the time. Like we have the same exact complexion, and um, but I missed nothing, and I tell prospective adoptive parents that you the love will be instantaneous. And I think so much of it comes from the journey that we had to go on.
Mhm.
And we were loving children before we knew because we didn't know. We didn't know if you unless you were very specific. Like I didn't choose a gender.
Right.
Um, and I wasn't totally hung up on race. So I just knew there was a baby coming and I was in love with whoever this baby was.
Right.
And that becomes what happens with a lot of us adoptive parents. We just fall in love with the fact that there is a baby coming.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing. It's pretty
Yeah.
amazing. Hold on for just a moment. We'll be right back.
This episode of Becoming Baby Ready is brought to you by Twig Fertility, a modern fertility clinic located in Midtown Toronto. At Twig, we believe that everyone deserves to build a family. We champion inclusivity and welcome people from across the full spectrum of lived experience. We proudly serve the 2S LGBTQIA+ community and are a trans-affirming space, offering a full range of family building options, including third-party coordination. For more information or to book a consult, visit twigfertility.com.
Throughout this whole process and throughout our lives as members of the 2S LGBTQIA+ community, there are opportunities for microaggressions and times for us to be made to feel as though we are the other. Have you had any of those experiences throughout your journey to become a parent and as a parent to Josiah?
It's interesting. I would never attribute some of that otherism to being a member of the 2S LGBTQIA+ community. What I have attributed a lot of my otherism is being a Black man.
Fair.
Um, a lot of the time, we here are raised in a culture where there are still gender roles. And many, especially from older generations, really don't believe that a man is capable of raising a child.
Right.
And but you still hear it even now, even with some in my generation, some who have children and they would not leave them with their husbands. And I was like, well, what is wrong with your husband? Do they have a record or something? I mean, what is this situation? And
Yep.
so, well, no, he's not going to know what to do with the baby. What? And so for me, that was such a foreign thought because my father and mother shared roles. There was no, my mother is a retired educator. My father is retired from a company that he had for 38 years. Um, my father gave me my first bath. He said my mother was busy reading a book and he said the baby is going to freeze. So he just bathed me. Um, it wasn't, it was no, my father cooked, he cleaned just as the way my mother did. So it was strange in my own mind when I got Josiah, and then there were especially older church women when I would take him to church. Put some socks on that baby's feet. Wouldn't you think, as the father, I knew what was best for him? But you don't, because you just see this man who you think really doesn't know do with that baby because men don't raise children.
Right.
I found it when it came to certain things in terms of Josiah's own. So I went through a whole process in terms of having him not tested. The word is eluding me at the moment. Evaluated because early on, when he was 3, I knew that he had ADHD. It wasn't the typical little boy thing. It was a bit more excessive than that, and I actually thought he was ED, which means emotionally disturbed, because tantrums were not your regular fallout in the floor; they were extreme. But going through the process of that evaluation, I often felt by the all-female psychological team that I did not have a clue. And I had to be very clear. I taught for a number of years and I taught music. And the value in teaching music is we teach every level of learner. So I know what I'm looking at here. While I didn't go to school to get a degree in education or special education, I taught every level of learner. And I had to fight. I had to fight because I had a Black boy in America who people automatically assume should be a certain way. And I had to say to them just that. I'm raising a Black boy in America. This is all on the heels of a George Floyd and all of these other tragic situations. And I said, my baby has come home to me alive every day. Every day. There is no option that he does not come back to me. And I have to do the work right now. But it took me so long. It took me so long. And I literally felt it had nothing to do with who I love, but every bit of my gender, and probably a good portion of what I look like, to be quite honest. Yeah, so I can't even say that. Have I heard the stories of people being othered? Yes. And I was othered not in my adoption process. I was othered in the church world. That's where I felt my other.
Right. Yeah. It's heartbreaking that all you wanted was for your son to be tested so that he could have the best quality of life that you could provide for him with the foundational understanding of how his brain worked, and that you were made to feel so insignificant as a parent and unqualified as a parent to have that request. And that's heartbreaking to me, that anybody would feel that they have the right. I mean, we live in a world where I feel like I don't understand why people feel they have the right to have opinions about many things. That is yet another piece, right?
It was very bad. And I remember one of the last meetings I had, I literally was sitting at my desk, pounding on it and screaming. And because I just needed someone to hear me. And they just continue with these blank stares. And Fortunately, I found another whole children's hospital here that immediately they listened, and he got the evaluation he needed. And I will say, um, he started medication in September. Last year, when he was in his classroom, poor thing, unable to maintain himself and destroying the classroom, having to be restrained by school administration. And this was something I knew, and I had to give approval. Well, I did not have, let me say that, I did not have to give approval, but I was a teacher. And I also thought about the safety of everyone else.
Right.
Not just my baby, but the safety of everyone else.
Right.
And so to go from that to this year, where you ended the year above grade level, and here they say to you, your child shouldn't be evaluated until they're 6 years old. And I had to say, is that a law? Did someone write that someplace? Is that in the Constitution? What are you talking about? He is going to be evaluated right now. And I literally said, because I said so.
Yeah.
But that's when I had to move on to a whole nother place. But because I had to fight that way, my baby is now doing extremely, extremely well. And that was a fight. I mean, I would go back and do it again, but I think it's a ridiculous fight to have to fight.
Yeah.
But I would do it all over again.
And sometimes you just need that one person to have that one voice and that one ear to just listen for 2 minutes. And then they hear what they know that they need to hear from you. But why does it take fighting so long and so hard to find that one person to be willing to take that time?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's problematic. So I definitely would send that out as a message to, any prospective fathers or fathers listening. You're not crazy. You also know, you will always know best what your child needs, no matter what your gender is. When we have children, we know our children.
Yes.
And don't let anyone try to make you think otherwise or make you think you're crazy.
Yes.
For what you know.
Right. 100%. You have taken on a whole new pathway since becoming a father. You're holding workshops and you're educating. Can you delve into that a little bit and let anyone listening know what kind of work has got you motivated and moving now?
The work of helping to build family. That's it. So I will say this was not something that I planned to do. As I said earlier, I'm an opera singer by profession. I just wanted to be on stages and be fabulous. That's all I wanted to do. Get on planes and go places, and that was it. Along and then drag my baby along potentially.
Right.
But when Josiah was 3, and literally the picture that is behind me is when he was 3. We did our first photo shoot from the time he was I think I did one when he was 1. And it was so devastating to me because my baby was all over the place. And I was like, I don't want to take any more, but he's so cute, but I don't want to take any more pictures. It's horrible. And so I found a photographer who we did it at play. And so it was perfect because if Josiah to this day has to stand and look at a camera, he's gonna make a crazy, he just can't. But I then posted on my Facebook page a profile picture of Josiah. So it wasn't this picture exactly, but it was a profile of him because I had never shown his face, never talked about any of this on Facebook. 3 years, it just never said anything.
Right.
And when I put the picture there, I said, fatherhood is the greatest journey of my life. And then people were like, what? Like, then it was just like all these questions, like, what do you mean? And probably some people thinking, oh Lord, is he still trying to be in somebody's closet or something? I mean, what is this? And so, because you got it from some of the questions, like, well, where did this be? Let me help you. And so I talked about my adoption journey. So in that, well, just not my journey, but just I talked about, being an adoptive parent. With that, it was amazing. The colleagues I had in New York who were adopted, I did not know. There were other colleagues. There was one in particular who, her story was she was found in a dumpster at a few weeks old. She's older than us, but she was found in a dumpster. That was part of her story. I taught with someone who's a birth mom, and I taught at a Catholic school. She's very staunchly Catholic, very taboo, because where in her generation, they were sent away.
Mm-hmm.
And so she put this in under the comments. And then, and this is when the tables turned, I had exactly one person say to me, I did not know it was legal for a single gay man to adopt. And I was like, legal? And that's when something kind of stirred inside of and that's something for me as a man of faith was really the Holy Spirit saying there's work for you to do. And we were still in the pandemic because this was in 2020. And we were walking, there's a state park a few blocks over from my house. And so Josiah, all we could do was walk through that park and look at trees. I was walking and the Lord said, tell your story. So I was like, oh, and I was very private at that point in my life. I mean, yeah, I was on stage performing, but no one's chasing around an opera singer. No one could have cared less about my life. And so I was like, I struggled with that. Tell your story. So I did a Facebook Live and I told my entire story. That got shared and liked thousands of times. I didn't have that many Facebook friends at that point because only people knew I was on Facebook when I thanked them for my birthday wishes. I was only on there once a year. I could have been dead the rest of the year. So, and again, in that, it was a lot of how. It was a lot of how questions, a lot of we didn't know. And so it was in November, essentially, of 2021 that I really felt this nudging. No, not 2021, excuse me, November of 2020, that I felt this nudging to do more.
Right.
And I spoke to one of Josiah's godmothers, and I was like, I was telling her all about it and what I wanted to do. And I said, but I don't have a name for it. And she literally was the one who named it Journey to Josiah, Lisa Evelyn, and Josiah, one of his godmothers. She named it Journey to Josiah. And in March, I formalized it. And I went on this journey to really, really be an advocate for our community and the world of adoption, but also the person who assured those in our community that you can do it.
Right.
And I will help you to through the process. But I'll be honest, Sam, I didn't know how tedious it was until I started doing this work. Because I coasted through, as I said earlier. I had it was easy breezy. I went to my one agency, got my baby in a year and 6 months, and on to life it was.
Right.
And I believe my process was easy so that I could then be a stronger voice for somebody else, because I knew how blessed I was. I knew it wasn't supposed to be that way, but it was. And so I have people who come to me who have been denied because they're gay. One client in San Francisco had been denied, San Francisco of all places here in the States, denied by 6 agents because he's a single gay man. 6. And what was said was birth families won't be comfortable with this. Who said that?
Isn't that up to the birth families to decide?
Precisely. But you don't give them the option. You just insert your own bias.
Right.
And in so many of the states here, there are no regulations that will keep agencies from discriminating. We talk a lot about Florida, but there's not just Florida. There's a lot of Midwestern states, a lot of Southern states. is pretty serious. And me trying to find adoption homes for people in some of these places, it's too much sometimes,
Yeah.
because I'm like, oh my God, we're not welcomed or wanted here.
Yeah.
So when you talk about the workshops, that is my effort to help those who want to, because I want to go where I'm celebrated,
Right.
not just tolerated.
Mm-hmm.
So those who want to, I want to help them. I had a meeting this morning with one of the young men from the workshop, and they said that they wanted to help me in building a collaborative, so meaning that agencies that are networking throughout the United States,
Right.
where they're all on that same page, letting everyone know that they are welcomed. Also building a collaborative for parents in our community to come together to talk about some of the things that we're talking about right now.
Right.
Building that support system. And it just so happened, which was unique, was that this young man is a member of the trans community. And that is, so I was so happy to have made that connection. But I'm happy that we have collectively had conversation about how can we do more.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what we need to keep doing, is having conversations to do more. If there are states or places like San Francisco, which, as you say, just sort of blows my mind that that's been their experience. But if you are in Texas and you're not having any luck in Texas because all the agencies say the same kind of thing, can you go to another state and adopt through an agency in another state? Is that something that's allowed to do? I'm not as familiar with it. So
you can do that. That is a little bit more tedious because then you're also contending with that state's regulations as well. So we call that interstate adoption. There are also national agencies that place. So one called Adopt US Kids. And so you can go through them and do your home study, and then build a profile there. And so you do have the opportunity to be able to be seen nationwide. People do opt to go on these online places. Now, I find those just about as sketchy as some online dating can be. Now, I say that with a little caveat that I met my partner on eHarmony, but at the same time, those places they are designed to protect birth parent and not prospective parent.
Right.
But all in all, to answer your question, yes, you can adopt outside.
How do people find out more about the Journey to Josiah organization and the workshops that you offer and all of the things?
Well, I'm on social media everywhere now. The person who did not do social media is now finding himself on every platform.
Right.
And so Instagram, Journey to Josiah, Facebook, Journey to Josiah. I'm still building TikTok. Going to be a little situation there, but the young people said I need to do it, so I'm going to figure this out.
You'd be amazed. You'd be amazed.
Okay.
There's lots of us adults on there too, not just young folk.
Lots of us adults. Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to join the jubilee of adults on TikTok soon. LinkedIn, I can be found there. And then, of course, I have a website, which is journeytojosiah.org. I have a YouTube page, channel. And so you can Google me, I'm everywhere.
There you go. And I'll make sure that it's in the show notes. All the contacts are in the show notes as well, because people need to be able to find you. As we wrap up, can you do me a favor? Can you tell me what your very, very favorite part of parenting is?
Ooh,
That's loaded, isn't it?
wow. It is. I I know that now this is gonna cause an eye-watering situation here. Um, my favorite part, the best part is that I have a baby who is so loving and so affectionate and just seems like right at the right time. He knows when daddy needs kisses.
Mhm.
And when we have children, they have this power to almost heal. When I taught, they were all my children,
Mhm.
and they had the power to heal. And but yes, my baby who just needs endless kisses. I know one day that might go away. I'm gonna need a new depression medication when that day comes. But who at every chance he gets is rubbing my cheek with his cheek. Um, and uh, yeah, it's just there's nothing like that kind of love. That is, we give it as parents, but to receive it, um, my mom often will say to me, "Oh my Lord, I just love when I just hear him say." He doesn't say Daddy, he says Dottie. I don't know where he's from. Um, and she said, "Everything is my Dottie, my Dottie, my Dottie." And so yeah,
Yeah,
just that I have a little being that loves me just that much as I love
that's pretty amazing.
him. Yeah.
That's pretty amazing. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today and telling the world your story. And I'll give you a moment to find a tissue.
Right.
It's yeah, parenting reduces us to that sometimes, and it for good and for bad, but most of the
Mhm,
time it's for
mhm,
good.
mhm.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it is. It is. I wouldn't trade it. Thank you
Not for
again.
anything. Oh, thank you. It's been a blast. I love chatting with you.